So, in one sense, it's not distinctive because a lot of leaders and wisdom traditions have been calling for this culture of encounter. And so that culture of encounter includes this building of relationships, prioritizing relationships first, and also prioritizing listening before speaking. And we know that from the Benedictine tradition, but we also have heard it from the big religious leaders like the Dalai Lama and the gurus in Hinduism, all the different religious traditions. So in one sense, it's not distinctive. What makes it distinctive, though, coming from Pope Francis, is that he's coming from that Catholic magisterial perspective, in the sense that he uses his position as the Pope to not only speak about this culture of encounter, and he's done this from the very beginning of his papacy, but also uses magisterial teachings. But and when I talk about magisterium, I'm not just talking about this official body of teachings, but he uses his experiences, he uses the wisdom of everyday people. He really doesn't just talk about it, he tries to model this sort of listening approach and culture of encounter. So I guess that's what makes it distinctive. I mean, it really means being prepared to attend to the person in front of you. This is what Pope Francis has been doing and promoting from the very beginning. And it's like entering a new country, really. It's assuming that you don't know much and that you want to learn, and that you have to take the stance of listening, and I guess being childlike and open to learning. It's also seeing the other person in front of you as your fellow neighbor, seeing their dignity is as equal as yourself, seeing your own dignity in their own dignity, watching the language and the symbols and even the dynamics of the relationship, watching all of those, and thinking about how I relate with the other person, my positioning myself above, below, or with the people that I'm in front of. It's about also, I guess, reassessing even your own position. So, for example, as a professor, I know some professors insist on being called professor, but with my own students, I don't take the credit for this. My director is actually the one who's taught me how to do this. He's I guess in Australia we don't really insist on titles anyway, but I call them fellow learners rather than students, and this creates a different dynamic between ourselves. It creates a dynamic of mutual learning rather than I have all the wisdom and all they need to do is soak up my wisdom. And so even when I mark their assignments, I always mention what I've learned from them, and then I give some suggestions and corrections. So it's really trying to foster that culture of encounter in the smallest ways that I can. As a mother as well, of course, being a mother of teenage children, I have no say about it. I have to learn the culture of encounter. It's an alien world. So yes, I have some experience. I try to guide my children, but I also try to treat them as adults. I try to learn from them what it means to respect them. And they've taught me that too. So it's not like I've approached them initially that way. They've also taught me how to be, a good mother to them. So that's those, I guess, those two main experiences that stand out for me. Just sorry, to return back to, there was one more. There's a third experience that I forgot to mention, which is actually really, really important. And that is, as a woman in the church that assumes what I'm supposed to be. And also, I guess, as an Asian and a woman of color. So I've learned that people make assumptions about people, and there are misunderstandings that can happen. And I have been misunderstood and left out, and that's why it's really important to have this stance of culture of encounter, because there is going to be misunderstandings. There is going to be people who are going to make assumptions about who people are, and then that limits the ability of that person to give to the world, and it limits the relationship as well. So anyway, I thought I'd just add that because that is important as part of my experience. I did have a really difficult position in which I was made a pastoral associate of a university for uh, um, the staff there, and that's equivalent to being a chaplain. I mean, that in itself is already difficult. They didn't want to call me a chaplain because I'm not ordained because I'm a woman. Anyway, that aside, I just worked with that. So I guess you work with what you have. But yeah, there was a moment where there was a woman who I had to attend to and be present to, as the face of the church. And she was, she was opposite to everything that I was. She like, I did my thesis on the church as a woman and mother and critiqued that. For her, she did a thesis on the church as bride, and she believed that women's place was to be mothers. That's their ultimate vocation, all of those things. So very opposite to my ideas. In fact, we had a big fight in the library, the theological library. And so it was awkward when I saw her at the university, because now I had to be present to her and I had to put that aside, our differences. Anyway, over time, we just formed a relationship. And when she left 2 years later to go to another job, she said to me that I was, she surprised me and our friendship surprised her, but it was a friendship that she treasured. And like how things would be different if she did not, she wasn't open to that friendship. And she relied on our friendship, in fact, to get through the difficult times in the university. So yeah, that's just one example where I was, encountering someone, building a relationship with someone who was completely opposite to me, but it turned out to be one of the best friendships that I've had. Even as she was leaving and she was saying, you're one of my closest friends, she said, but we know that I still believe that woman's ultimate vocation is motherhood and yours is not. So, we still understood our differences, but we appreciated the friendship more. Pope Francis is heading in the right direction in the sense of turning more and more to the Indigenous peoples and their wisdom. And they like, for us, we're only, as Christians, we're only learning about or relearning stewardship and integral ecology, all those things. Those things have always been part of the Indigenous cultures. They've always known that land is not to be possessed. They know that their connection, they know that they're not separate units. They know that yes, they have their individual differences, but ultimately everything is connected, and so what they do has an effect on another person. And also in one sense, the collective societies also have their sort of difficulties. I mean, being Filipina, I'm part of a collective society too, so that has its own difficulties too. But it also means that you never think of yourself as just yourself. You always think you think as a part of a group, and how what you do has an effect on other people. But also what Pope Francis is doing is, we have to go beyond just the humans. We have to be creation centered rather than human centered or anthropocentric. In terms of looking to culture, the film from Netflix, The Best of Enemies. It's a great film. I just watched it. It's a great story about how the leader of the Ku Klux Klan and the leader of the Black movement was put together and to make a decision about the fact that there were school kids, Black school kids whose school was burnt down and they needed to go to a school, and they were finding a way to trying to find a solution. And well, sorry to give away the ending, but in the they formed a relationship, and in the end the Ku Klux Klan member actually gave way and said yes, the Black kids could go to the the white kids school. And that friendship has existed for many decades, obviously at a cost, but it was just like a beautiful example of this culture of encounter. They were forced to put into a position of where they had to relate with each other, learn to see each other as fellow human beings, and in that started to see the people rather than the issue first. So that's a really amazing example. I recommend everyone to watch it. And then the other example is my sister-in-law. She I think maybe a year or 2 years ago, somehow she just felt like she needed to go to Melbourne, where a number of refugees were locked up in a hotel in Melbourne, and she just felt like she needed to do something. So those refugees were, had come by boat, and so they were considered illegal, and she just made friends with them. And through her friendship with them, building trust with them, she made more inroads in helping them to be released than all these refugee organizations. And and she doesn't want to take this credit, but I think, she had a lot to do with their release. And that was because she befriended them. She let them speak for themselves rather than speaking for them. She gave them platforms to speak. She's still doing it now. And I guess governments also saw her as, non-partisan. She was just an individual who just really wanted to free her friends rather than having, financial or other agendas behind it. She used social media, and she just gathered people, and whenever she heard anything from her refugee friends, she just posted it on Facebook. And she was just insistent. She made relationships, obviously, with government officials and refugee advocates. She just brought them all together because they were all sort of doing their own thing, and she was a person who brought them all together.